that, I will give a brief interview for Introduction to Global Forest Watch. So for those maybe familiar, we are a freely, openly accessible platform designed to increase knowledge and transparency about forest landscapes. Many of our users use this information to mobilize local action, especially when they're seeing deforestation happening around the world. We have over hundreds of data sets that a variety of users can use for many use cases, such as advancing private sector action to just stop commodity-driven deforestation. And for those who are return users, we're excited to share how you can use the fire data today in multiple ways in your work. And so you're going to hear more from our guest speakers who are going to show examples of what this data looks like on Global Forest Watch in action. And then I will introduce our great speakers. So you're going to hear from James McCarthy, research analyst at Global Forest Watch. We also have three guest speakers that we're really excited for y'all to hear from today. Chong-Yi Ching, who is peatland program manager from People's Movement to Stop Haze. Juan Pablo Valdivieso, who is program director for Instituto Boliviano de Investigación Forestal. And Juan Manuel Cosio de Leon, who is geographic information systems manager at the National Institute of Forests. And I am Isabella Barriga. I am a community engagement manager for Global Forest Watch. I'll be your moderator throughout today's webinar. And so here's our agenda. We're going to go over first, I'll hand off to Jimmy, who's going to walk us through the global trends in forest fires and their impacts. We'll give an overview of the fire data available on Global Forest Watch, and then you'll hear from each of our guest speakers and their user stories of the data. And then we'll have some time at the end for questions from the audience. And with that, I will hand the mic to Jimmy to walk us through fires in the world and what we're seeing and some of the impacts.
Great, thank you, Isabella. Before we get started, I just want to emphasize that not all fires are bad. Fire is an essential component of some ecosystems and can be beneficial in many circumstances. For example, small, infrequent fires and controlled burning reduces the accumulation of flammable materials like dead leaves and branches that fuel larger fires. They also clear out invasive species and diseased plants and release nutrients back into the soil, as well as promote the growth of fire-adapted plants. Therefore, eliminating fire from ecosystems that are well adapted to it is often not desirable. Fires become problematic when their extent, frequency, or severity. Oh, sorry, next slide. Fires become problematic when their extent, frequency, or severity exceeds historical patterns of fire activity. Extreme wildfires, which are high intensity, fast spreading, and uncontrollable, have become more common over the past few decades. And these kinds of fires often result in substantial tree canopy loss and negatively impact forest processes. Next slide. According to an updated analysis by World Resources Institute, forest fires are becoming more widespread. They're causing twice as much tree cover loss now as they did in 2001. And since the turn of the century, fires accounted for more than a quarter of all tree cover loss worldwide. These statistics are unfortunately not a surprise and follow record-breaking forest fires in Canada, Russia, and Australia in 2023, 2021, and 2019. Other countries have also seen record-breaking fire activity, with forest fires in the tropics increasing faster than anywhere else. Brazil and Bolivia, for example, have both seen a spike in fire activity in recent years, and the 2024 fire season is currently on track to be one of the worst either country has experienced. As such, understanding fires and fire dynamics is critical to understanding our changing forests. Next slide. As more forest area burns and fires become more extreme, their impact on people and the environment will likely worsen. Large amounts of carbon is released when forests burn. Wildfires in Canada in 2023 released as much carbon dioxide as India, the third largest country for fossil fuel emissions. Extreme wildfires also impact forest wildlife and diminish the capacity of forests to maintain biodiversity. Wildfires in Australia, for example, likely killed more than 1 billion animals over the course of the fire season. The loss of vegetation and changes in soil structure resulting from extreme wildfires can also increase flooding risks after fires are put out. And burning vegetation also produces smoke, which impacts air quality and public health. Wildfires in Indonesia in 2015, for example, resulted in tens of thousands of premature deaths due to smoke inhalation. Extreme wildfires are also more likely to damage houses and infrastructure and disrupt supply chains, which increases the costs associated with forest fires. Next slide. Climate change is likely a major factor behind the increase in forest fires, but forest fires themselves can also intensify the impacts of climate change. Primarily fueled by fossil fuel emissions, climate change is causing hotter and drier weather conditions that make forests more prone to catch fire. As fires become more severe and larger areas burn, more of the carbon stored in trees and soil is released into the atmosphere, further exacerbating climate change. Given all of this, it is critical to be able to monitor when, where, and how much fire is happening across the world, which is the point of today's webinar. Next slide. Now that we've discussed some of the trends in forest fires and their impacts, let's look at what kind of fire data is available on Global Forest Watch. Next slide. Global Forest Watch offers a variety of data sets that can help users measure and monitor fire activity in their area of interest. All the fire data sets on Global Forest Watch offer global coverage and can be separated into two groups. The first one, fire activity data, includes data on active fires as well as annual data on forest fire extent. The second group, which is the contextual data, includes data on fire weather and air quality. We'll cover each data set in more detail in the next few slides. Next slide. The first data set that we'll talk about is the Global Air Quality Index. This data set measures smoke and haze from fires, which can strongly impact air quality. One example is the wildfires in Canada last year impacted air quality thousands of miles away in China and Europe. The Air Quality Index measures current air quality at 15,000 stations worldwide and is updated every 15 minutes. And users can use this data to understand how forest fires impact air quality and identify areas that may need additional public health resources. Next slide. Forest fires are more likely to occur and spread when weather conditions are hot, dry, and windy. The Global Fire Weather Index identifies areas at high risk of fire based on precipitation, temperature, relative humidity, wind speed, and snow depth. The data set is updated daily and provides users with a 7-day fire danger forecast, which can be used to identify areas with a high risk of fire and implement burn bans in those areas to prevent fires from occurring and potentially escaping into the surrounding area. Next slide. The tree cover loss due to fire data offers detailed information on long-term trends in forest fire extent. Users can visualize all 23 years of data on the map and dashboard on Global Forest Watch. This data set allows users to distinguish between tree cover loss due to fire and other drivers of loss, like commodity-driven deforestation. The data set maps stand replacing wildfires and includes fires caused by lightning, as well as those caused by humans. Because the data is intended to map tree cover loss due to fire, it does not include low-intensity fires or understory fires. It also does not capture fires that are used to clear recently deforested areas, because in those cases, the initial cause of forest loss is logging. Land clearing fires that escape into the surrounding forest, however, are captured in the data, which is updated annually. Next slide. This data set was recently used to calculate the total extent of forest fires in Canada in 2023 and estimate their carbon emissions in a recent paper. Next slide. One of the most used data sets on Global Forest Watch is the active fire alert data, which detects ongoing fires across all land cover types in near real time. Fire alerts detect a variety of fires, including wildfires, as well as fires used to clear land. It is important to note that fire detection depends on a variety of factors that include things like the fire size, the fire intensity, the type of land cover, and the time of day. And high cloud cover can also hinder fire detection, though it is a little bit less of an issue than with other satellite products that rely on visible light for fire detection. GFW users can filter fire alerts by confidence level on the map and on the dashboards to reduce the number of false positives included in the data. High confidence fire alerts include fewer false positives, but they may miss some smaller fires. In contrast, the lower confidence alerts will capture more fires, but will also include more false positives. Users can sign up to receive email notifications when alerts are detected in an area of interest on Global Forest Watch as well. Next slide. Users can compare current and historical alert data on the dashboard on Global Forest Watch to better understand how current fire activity compares to past years. Looking at the dashboard for Bolivia shows that the number of active fire alerts are unusually high for this time of year, much higher than any previous year. The screenshot shown here is actually from earlier this month, and as I'm sure our speakers in Bolivia can tell you, the situation has only worsened since then. Now that you have a better understanding of the fire data on Global Forest Watch, I'll hand things back to Isabella to introduce our speakers who will talk about how they use fire data in their work.
Great. Thank you so much, Jimmy, for that great presentation. We're now going to give Juan Pablo the floor. Juan Pablo, the floor is yours.
Muy bien, muchísimas gracias. Gracias. El lema del
Thank you
equipo
very
es
much.
gente fuerte, bosques fuertes.
EVIF
Eso es
is
importante
gente
para
fuerte,
nosotros
bosques
porque los bosques
fuertes,
son
which is
nuestro
important for
futuro.
us because people is the strongest
El
portion.
Instituto Boliviano de
And the
Investigación
Bolivian Institute
es
of
una organización, la siguiente, por favor, es una
Investigation is an
organización
organization. Next, please.
sin fines de lucro.
It is a non-lucrative institution.
Buscamos generar
And we look
difundir
to
conocimientos,
create and
habilidades y
spread
herramientas para el manejo
tools,
y
knowledge
aprovechamiento
in
integral
order
de los
to
ecosistemas
profit
bolivianos
the
de forma
Bolivian
sustentable y equitativa de los
resources
recursos naturales para el beneficio
and
del ser
use
humano y la
the
biodiversidad en general.
equitably the
Siguiente.
natural resources for the benefit of the human and the general biodiversity. Next, please.
Trabajamos de manera
We
coordinada con
work
socios
jointly
internacionales,
with international
gobiernos
partners, local
estatales,
governments,
gobiernos
municipal governments,
nacionales, territorios indígenas,
indigenous
organizaciones forestales
lands,
comunitarias
and
para desarrollar
community
mejores
forest
capacidades para un
organization in
manejo
order to
integrado del
develop
bosque
better
y así poder
capabilities
promover en
and
jóvenes
to
hombres y
promote
mujeres la
in
conciencia
youngsters,
sobre la
men and women,
importancia de los
awareness about
beneficios
the
de la
importance of
conservación
the
en la
exercise and
gobernanza de los bosques.
participation in the
La
governance of
regulación
their
del
lands.
bosque es
The
importante, la gestión de los
value of
recursos
the
naturales,
forest
la
is important,
conservación
management
de sus
of natural
territorios, la
resources,
gestión de
preservation
riesgos
of
como
lands,
incendios,
risk
el
management
uso de
against
herramientas de
forests,
monitoreo,
the use of
entre otros.
monitoring tools, among
Siguiente, por
others.
favor.
Next, please.
Estamos interviniendo en varias regiones
We are having some
trabajamos
actions in different regions, mainly in
en la
Santa
TCO
Cruz,
Brayos,
TCO
con
Brayos,
1.3 millones de
with
hectáreas,
1.3
TCO
million
Monteverde,
hectares,
1 millón de hectáreas,
TCO
en la
Monteverde,
TCO
1 million
Lomerío
hectares,
Velasco Costero,
TCO
Comaroco,
Lomerío Velasco,
en
zero
temas
point 2
costeros.
million hectares.
Estamos impactando en
Regarding
2.5
forest,
millones de
we
hectáreas
have
de costas y a su vez
2.5
también estamos
million
apoyando a varios
hectares of
gobiernos
impact, and we are
municipales,
giving support to
lo
different
cual
municipality
afecta,
governments, and this is
tiene áreas de
affecting or is
aproximadamente
having an
9.5
action
millones de
area of
hectáreas de
9.5
costas
million
y territorios.
hectares
Next.
in in the different areas. Next.
Trabajamos
We work
considerando una serie de aspectos
considering different
a
issues.
través de una gobernanza
This is
inclusiva.
through an
Esto
inclusive
implica un
governance,
consenso comunitario
meaning a
sobre
community
cómo utilizar y
consensus of
respetar
how to
nuestros
use
bosques
and
y
respect our
ecosistemas
land
a través del manejo forestal comunitario
through
ante
the
las ciudades
community
y de un
indigenous land.
modelo forestal inclusivo y
We have an
operacional.
inclusive model.
Trabajamos con género
We
y
work
juventud en la
with a
incorporación
gender
de
and
la
youngster
perspectiva
by
de género
incorporating different
en el nivel de
perspectives
gobernanza
in the
institucional y
governance and
social de
institutional
manera transversal.
level and in
Trabajamos en el
different
tema de manejo
horizontal
sostenible para
levels.
fortalecer los gobiernos
Um,
subnacionales e indígenas para que
we
usen
work with
riesgos de
indigenous to
incendios
risk
forestales enfocadas
the
en la prevención y la alerta temprana.
forest
También
risk,
trabajamos
and also we
procesos
work with
inclusivos de
early alert in
capacitación,
inclusive
capacidades
business
y
to have
oportunidades para
inclusion
desarrollar negocios
capabilities
con las
and
comunidades.
developing
Siguiente.
businesses within communities. Next.
hemos generado diferentes
We have
capacidades
created
a
different
través, por ejemplo, de la
capabilities
unidad técnica de
through
lomería y
the
control que se encuentra en el
SICOL,
territorio de Lomerío
which
para
is in the
monitorear
Romerio
incendios y
territory
deforestación.
for
Ahí podemos ver
deforestation and
los
fires.
inspectores
Here we
forestales,
can
la
see
oficina de la unidad
monitoring
industrial,
monitoring of
diferentes documentos
fires,
que nos
different
permiten tener
documents that is allowing us
protocolos
also
para poder
to
llevar a cabo
have different ways of
foros,
managing this,
resoluciones
which is protocols,
correspondientes, porque
resolutions, and so on. Next.
se han generado una serie
We
de
have
talleres de
created
capacitación
different
para
training
monitores
workshops for
territoriales de la unidad técnica de lomería,
monitors of
tanto
the
en
SICOL,
gabinete como en campo.
both on
Esto
field
es
and
una
in
plataforma muy
classroom.
importante para
This
desarrollar
platform is
la
very important to
siguiente.
develop these special topics next.
Podemos ver ahí en esas
Here we're
imágenes
able to see
los
in these
diferentes
pictures
talleres de
the different
capacitación que se
workshops.
realizan
Those
para
are
monitores.
trainings that are made with the
Trabajo de campo
monitors.
es
We
fundamental
see
para
the
poder
work field,
asegurar
which is essential to
que
make
podamos
sure
detectar
that
fuegos de
what we are
calor
able to
con los
detect
mapas previos
with
para
fires or
que
with
sea
different heat
evidentemente
maps are
eficiente, por
the
favor.
actual event. Next.
Se puede hacer con el trabajo de campo, se hace la
With this field
verificación
work,
y la
we
validación
verify
de las alertas de
and validate
deforestación
deforestation
e incendios
alerts
forestales,
and
utilizando esta
forest
aplicación del
fires by
Forest
using
Watcher.
with
Y
this
asimismo
Flores Watch
también
app.
otras herramientas que son
Also, we use
importantes
other
para
different
asegurar
tools that
que
are
sean fuegos
important
de
to make
calor
sure that we are having
controlados
heat
y que tengan
points
algún tipo
and
de
that is
afectación
a
a
deforestation
la
and
unidad
there is an
para las
actual
plantas
affectation.
correspondientes y elevarlas
So
a las
we
diferentes
are
instancias
able
que
to
corresponden.
take the relevant
Siguiente.
actions and to inform the different actors. Next.
Podemos ver ahí
Here
en el
we
caso
are able
de
to
la
see
SICOL, que es uno de los
in
ejemplos que tenemos,
SICOL,
la
which is
suscripción
one
de un
of the
convenio de
events, we have a
colaboración que se
subscription and
elabora
cooperation
con la
agreement that
Unidad
is
de Bosques
made
y
with
Tierra, es la
land
organización
and
nacional
forest
que vela por el control de los bosques
organizations, which
y la
is
tierra, y
leading with
las diferentes
the
resoluciones que
different
emite
resolutions and
la unidad
the
técnica del
surveillance of
gobierno,
land
por ejemplo, los
and
COEM, que son
forests,
bastante
and we have the
más
COEM,
grandes, donde
which are
se
bigger
desarrolla
instances when we are
lo
able
que se
to
alcanzan, digamos, los
uh,
niveles
see
bajos.
that different
Siguiente, por
fires
favor.
go through different levels. Next.
Como lecciones aprendidas,
As
tenemos de que
lesson
el
learned,
Global Forest Watch
Global
realmente nos ha
Forest Watch
servido a
is
nosotros
really useful for
como
us.
base para poder crear
And this is a base
diferentes
to
centros de
create
monitoreo
different monitoring
en la
centers.
capitanía. Tenemos en 3 municipios,
And we have three
también estamos
municipalities.
habiendo construido en la FIC, que es un territorio
We have the SAFIT,
un
which
poco
is
más
the
de 1 millón de
rural
hectáreas.
area
Esto nos
of 1
permite
million
también tener
hectares, which is allowing
un
us
poco más
to
de amplitud de acción a
have
través de
more
programas
action and
de
also to
incendios,
support
en el
more
caso de Bolivia,
regarding fires. In this case,
un poco
Bolivia,
más fuertes en
and we
zonas
have
rurales.
more
También la
fires,
plataforma de
mainly
trabajo
in
de monitoring
forest. And also,
permite
Global Forest
una
Watch
mayor
platform
facilidad
is
de
allow us
acceso a la
to have
información
more
relacionada a esta
access
problemática de fuegos de
to
calor.
information related to
Monitoreo
deforestation
de
and
EBIP,
heat points. The monitoring
el
centers
gabinete
that the
puede
EBIP
realizarse esta actividad, pero
supports
es sumamente importante que
can
se
make
haga
this
la
activity, but
verificación de
it's
campo para
very
tener
important
mejor
to have a
certeza
field
de los datos que
verification
vamos a
to be
obtener.
certain of
La
the
siguiente, por favor.
information. Next.
Acá podemos ver cómo hemos empezado a
Here,
apoyar
this is how we
diferentes
have started
gobiernos
to
municipales
support
como el
the
Centro de
different
Monitoreo, el
municipality
Centro Territorial
governments
de
with the
Monitoreo que se
monitoring
encuentra a la
systems. We have
izquierda,
Romerio at
frente
the left,
arriba el Centro de
center
Monitoreo
of
del Gobierno
center.
Municipal de
We
San
have
Miguel de Velasco,
San Miguel de
a la
Velasco,
derecha de arriba el Centro de Monitoreo de la Reserva
right?
Guarayos en la
We
FIC,
have Guarayos
de
AFIC,
la izquierda
and
abajo el
then
Centro de
at the
Monitoreo del
lower
Gobierno
left,
Municipal
we
de San
have
Ignacio
the
de Velasco,
monitoring center of
del
San
centro
Miguel,
para
San
abajo el
Ignacio de
Centro de
Velasco,
Monitoreo de
at the
Urichap
center, down
y
at the
abajo a la
center,
derecha el Centro
Urichap.
de Monitoreo
And
de
then we
Ascensión de
have
Guarayos, que son
Ascensión de
sumamente
Guarayos,
importantes
which is really
para la
important
detección,
for
para la alerta temprana,
detecting,
en este caso.
for the
El
early
siguiente, por favor.
detection in this case. Next.
Podemos ver las diferentes
We can
capacitaciones que
see
se
different
realizan para
trainings
diferentes sectores. Podemos
for
ver
different
jóvenes,
sectors.
hombres,
We
mujeres
see
y
youngsters,
diferentes
women,
actores que son
different
sumamente
actors,
importantes
which
para
are
poder
essential
tener mejores capacidades
to
con los
have
actores
better
la actividad
capabilities as
antibacterial
actors so
y
they are
asimismo
able to
tenemos
develop
las
and apply the
investigaciones.
technology next.
Vemos ahí los diferentes grupos
We have
que hay
different groups
en tanto en los territorios de Guarayos y la
in
Chiquitanía
Guarayos and Chiquitania
con el uso de los sistemas de monitoreo
with the
satelital
use
y
of
también se
satellite
hacen
monitoring
capacitaciones
systems,
a
and we
bomberos
also train
municipales, a bomberos comunitarios,
municipal
es decir, que el
fire
alcance es
groups,
interesante en cuanto a la prevención
meaning the
y
scope
al
is
sistema
very
de rescate
interesting
humano.
regarding prevention and early alerts next.
Eh, Otro tema importante es de que no
Something
solamente
important is that
se ha visto el tema de focos de
we
calor,
have
de
not
incendios, de
only talked
deforestación, sino
about
también ha
fire,
incorporado el tema del
deforestation, or
monitoreo
heat
y
points, but
manejo
also we
forestal. Para
have
ello se está
integrated
utilizando
monitoring
un
of
sistema,
forest,
por
and
ejemplo,
that's why they are
Bolivian
using the
Initiative,
Bolivian tool.
tiene unos
And
indicadores
we have
importantes
some
para
important
asegurar que se pueda
indicators
realizar
to
un
make
buen
sure
manejo del
that we
bosque
are
y que
having a
realmente
good use of the
los
forest,
requisitos para
and
que
that
realmente
the tool
tengamos
is
una
giving the
forestación
requirements, so we
verde,
are
sabana
having a
y
green
reforestación
certification, and therefore to
responsable
take
y
care
que tenga mejor
uh,
beneficio
with
para las
in a
comunidades.
better way the fires and have a
Seguimos.
benefit for the communities next.
Muy bien, bueno, el tiempo es muy corto.
So
Bueno,
time is very
tratamos de
short.
resumir
We
de
have
una
tried
manera
to make a
efectiva todo lo
summary,
que está realizando el BIP. Seguramente
everything
va a
that
haber
the BF is
algunas
doing.
preguntas y también
Um,
podemos dar alguna
and
información para
we are
que
also able
complementar
to answer some questions
enriquecer.
and to provide some information
Muchísimas
and
gracias.
enrich in this slide. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo, for that great overview of the work that you're doing in Bolivia and the different ways that you use the data in your work. I'll now hand off to our next speaker, Juan Manuel. Whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Buenos días. ¿Se escucha?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sí.
Ok, perfecto. Buenos días a todos. Mi
So
nombre
good
es Juan
morning,
Manuel
everyone. My name
Custodio.
is Juan Manuel
Trabajo para el Instituto
Custodio. I
Nacional
work
de
for the
Bosques
National
de
Institute of
Guatemala
Forests in
y
Guatemala,
les voy a presentar los
and I
sistemas de
will
monitoreo
introduce
forestal
the
que se han
forest
implementado a
monitoring
través del
systems that have been
Departamento de Sistemas
implemented
de
through
Información Geográfica. Siguiente, por favor.
the Geographic Information Systems Department. Next.
Bueno, para empezar, el Instituto Nacional de Bosques
The
es
National
el
Forest
equivalente al Servicio
Service
Forestal
is the
Nacional
same
que
as
fue
the
creado en el año
National
96
Forest System
y
that was
es el
created in
órgano de
1996
dirección y
and is
autoridad
the
competente
authority
en el sector público
in
en
the
materia
public
forestal.
sector regarding forests.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next.
Bueno, yo siempre reconozco el trabajo del
I have
equipo.
always
En el
recognized the
departamento
teamwork.
somos 6
In the
personas
department,
que
we are
estamos
6
trabajando a nivel nacional
individuals working in a
en boscación
national
y
level
pues
with the SIC,
estos son
and
mis compañeros, ¿verdad?
they are
Siguiente.
my co-workers. Next.
Como antecedente, el Instituto Nacional de
The
Bosques tiene
National
lo que le
Institution of
llamamos
Forest
incentivos
is
forestales.
having
Estos
forest
incentivos forestales
incentives.
son programas que el
Those
gobierno
are
implementa
programs
para
the
promover
government
prácticas de
implement to
manejo
promote
forestal sostenible,
practices for
en el cual
sustainable
tenemos
activities,
5
where
modalidades.
we have
La
5
primera son
modes.
plantaciones
First is
forestales.
forest
eh,
plantations.
la segunda es manejo de bosque
2,
natural con fines de
management of
protección.
natural forests for
También incentivamos
protection
sistemas
and
agroforestales, la
also
restauración
agroforest
forestal
systems,
y el manejo de
forest
bosque natural
restoration,
con fines
and the management of
productivos.
natural forests for production.
Podríamos darle enter, por favor, para ver el
Next,
mapa.
please, to see the map.
Estos incentivos están
Those
distribuidos en todo el
incentives are
país.
distributed in the
Actualmente
whole
tenemos
country.
más de 83
Currently, we have more than
polígonos a los cuales
89,000
anualmente se les da un
polygons where
monitoreo.
annually we monitor all of them.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next,
Siguiente.
next.
Para empezar, tenemos el sistema
We have
de monitoreo de incendios forestales,
the forest
el
monitoring
cual tiene
system,
4
which
componentes. Y el
has
primer
4
componente es
components.
el de
The first
puntos de
one
calor. Este es el
is the
sistema de
heat
alerta
points.
temprana, con el
This
cual
is an
nos
early alert
conectamos
system where
a
we
través
are
de app
connected
a los
through
puntos de calor de
app
firms de la NASA a nivel mundial.
and to
Y
the
posteriormente, mediante procesos
NASA
automatizados que ya tenemos ya
heat point system.
interceptamos la
And we intersect
forestales,
assistance
incentivos
for
forestales,
forest
como lo
coverage and
mencioné,
also different
áreas
incentives,
protegidas
as
del
we mentioned
país,
before,
departamentos
the
y
protected
municipios,
areas of the
para poder
country,
tener mayor
municipalities,
información.
departments, in order to have more information for these
Esto se
heat points.
actualiza cada
This
2
is
horas
updated
de
every
forma
2 hours
automática y también
automatically.
actualiza un dashboard que
And
tenemos
also it's updating the
a disposición
dashboard
del
that we
público
have
para que puedan
available
ir
for the
monitoreando
public so they
también
are
cómo
able
están los
to
puntos de
monitor
calor en
where the
el
heat
país.
points are in the country.
Aparte de esto, los puntos de calor,
Besides the heat
como les decía, es una
points,
alerta
as
temprana,
we
también tenemos
say,
un
this is
proceso
an early
automatizado
alert, but we
con
have
el
an
cual se
automated
hacen
process.
alertivos
Here
a través
we
de correos
have alerts
electrónicos y
through
también mensajes
email
SMS
and
a
to
los
SMS
dispositivos de la red de contactos que
to
nosotros
the
tenemos.
contact
Nosotros
network that
trabajamos
we
con
have
varias
because
instituciones
we work with
estatales
different
como es el
institutions
Consejo
like
Nacional de Áreas Protegidas
National
y
Council of
también con la
Protected Areas
Coordinadora
and
Nacional de
the
Reducción de
National
Desastres, que
Coordination of
coordina todo este tema de
Disaster
incendios en
Reduction,
nuestra
which is
región.
coordinating all those systems.
Se envían mensajes de texto,
Then
se envían mapas en
SMS are
PDF
sent, also PDF
georreferenciados y
maps,
KML, ¿verdad?
georeferences, and so on.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next.
Aquí podemos ver,
Here,
podemos darle enter para que se muestren las imágenes.
another enter, please.
Aquí podemos ver cómo
Here
funciona
we see
el
how
alertivo, ¿verdad? Este
the
es el flujo
alert
de
works.
trabajo
This is
y
the
estos son los
workflow,
mensajes que le
and
llegan a
those
los
are the
encargados
different
climáticos de
messages
las
that
regiones que tenemos a
get
nivel
to
nacional.
the people in
Les
charge
indica
in
cuántos
the
puntos de
region.
calor hay
Here we
dentro de un
say
incentivo
how
forestal,
many heat points
qué
we have
subregión
in
pertenece o a
a
qué
fire,
departamento
which
pertenece,
is the
y
region
para que nuestros
department,
puedan
and
contactarse con los
also
propietarios de estas áreas y poder coordinar lo más
so they
pronto
are able
posible
to
el
get in
combate de un
touch with
incendio.
the owners
Siguiente.
of the areas and to fight against this fire. Next.
El otro componente, el segundo
Another
componente es
component,
el
the second component,
aviso de incendio forestal.
is a
Luego de que el
notification
punto
of
de calor se
forest fire
confirmaba como un incendio,
after the
se envía una boleta
confirmation.
digital
Then we have a
que puede ser
digital
enviada a través
bullet
de los
that is
dispositivos
sent
móviles
through
y
mobile
reportar
devices,
el incendio
and then
forestal.
we're able to
Esto
report the forest
también de
fire.
forma automática notifica a las
Automatically,
entidades
it
que están a
notifies
cargo del
entities
manejo
that are
del
in
fuego
charge
para que
of
pueda
the
haber una
fire,
respuesta más
so
rápida.
they are able to have a faster
Siguiente,
response.
por favor.
Next.
Siguiente.
Next.
Bueno, luego de que el incendio es liquidado, también
After
tenemos una
we
boleta
fight
de
against this
reporte
fire, we have a
post-incendio, ¿verdad?
report,
Esto es para
post-fire
registrar
report,
todas
and this is to
las
record
actividades realizadas en
all
campo. Por ejemplo,
activities
cuántas
done
personas
on
participaron
site.
en la
How many
extinción del
people
incendio,
participated
cuántos vehículos
fighting this
utilizaron,
fire, how
cuánta
many
gasolina
vehicles were
se
used,
consumió,
the fuel
cuánta
that
fue el
was
área afectada, qué
consumed,
tipo de
the
vegetación
affected
fue
area, the
la
type
afectada
of
en el área.
vegetation
Y esto
affected,
nos va a servir después
and
para
this will
hacer
be useful
investigaciones.
later on
Entonces,
to
la
make
idea
some
es tener todo
research. So
bien
the idea is
georreferenciado
to
y
have
almacenado en una
all
base de
this
datos
year
que
reference
pueda ser de
information
fácil
I have
acceso
a
para nosotros.
database that will be
Siguiente,
easily
por favor.
accessed. Next.
Este sería el tercer componente.
This
Y
would
el
be the
cuarto
third
componente
component. And the fourth
son las
component
cicatrices de fuego.
are
Creo que
the
al
fire
principio la primera
scars.
persona que expuso
At the
mencionaba
beginning, it
sobre
was
las emisiones de
mentioned
carbono. Entonces, en el
the
INAH
carbon
también
emissions. So
monitoreamos
in
o
INAR, we
cuantificamos
also
las áreas
monitor
quemadas
or
año con año.
quantify
Y
areas
podríamos ver el
that
siguiente, por favor. Y tenemos ya
we see
registros
here. Next, please.
desde
And
el año
also we have
2000
some
hasta el año
recordings from the
2024
year
de las
2000
cicatrices
to
de fuego que han afectado al país.
2024 of
Entonces,
the fire
con
scars
esto
affecting the country.
eh,
So with this,
podríamos también dar
we are
datos
able
de
to
cuánto
give
carbono
data of
se emite
how
por las
much
incendios
carbon is
forestales.
there because of the fire.
Siguiente.
Next, please.
Los principales impactos en el uso de estos
Main
datos es la
impacts of the
respuesta más
use of
rápida y
this
efectiva,
data is the
gracias a la
faster and
integración de estos
effective
datos,
response because of
automatización
the
de niveles de alerta
integration of this
mejorados
data.
significativamente.
We
Y
have a
un
significant
segundo
improvement, and
impacto
a
es la
second
toma de
impact
decisiones
is
informadas. Las cicatrices
informed
de calor
decision
han
making.
permitido tomar decisiones y
The heat
priorizar
points
zonas
allow
de
us
riesgo para
to make
implementar las medidas
information and
preventivas y
prioritize areas
operativas de
to
emergencia.
prioritize
Entonces,
activities
siguiente, por
also
favor.
and prioritize
Siguiente.
our staff also.
Un tercer
A
impacto es
third
el monitoreo
impact would be
continuo,
a
ya que la
continuous
plataforma
monitoring because
funciona
the
de forma
platform is
automática y
uh,
autónoma, pues está disponible
working
24/7 y
autonomously, therefore is
garantiza
available
un
24/7,
monitoreo
which is
constante sin la necesidad de
making sure to
intervención
have a
humana.
constant
Entonces,
monitoring without a manual
es muy
intervention. So
importante el
it is
tema de la
very
automatización de
important,
esta información.
this
Y
automation
como
part.
último impacto es la
And as
reducción de
last,
tiempos
point, we have the reduction of
tenemos la
analysis
información
time because
disponible
we
a
have
cualquier hora
information available anytime
y en grandes cantidades y
and in
volúmenes
big
de datos.
amounts and
Esto
volumes of
permite
satellite data. This is allowing
automatizar
us
la
to
identificación de
automate
estos puntos y
the
generar informes
identification of these
y
points and to
realizarlos de
create
manera
reports
casi
and to
automática.
almost make them automatically.
Siguiente.
Next.
Bueno, como la parte de las lecciones aprendidas es que
As lesson learned,
la
we have
integración
that
de
the
tecnologías y
integration of
plataformas
technology and platforms
automatizadas pues ha permitido la
which are
colaboración
automatic has
interinstitucional,
allowed
¿verdad?
the
Antes
interinstitutional
cada
cooperation.
institución pues jalaba
Before,
por su
each
lado y ahora pues
institutions
ya
were
estamos
doing their own
integrando un
activity, and
sistema más
today we are
robusto para
integrating a
poder
more robust
combatir
system in order to fight against
los incendios forestales.
forest fires.
Hay también instituciones no
Here we have
gubernamentales que colaboran con nosotros para
non-government institution
combatir
cooperating
incendios.
with us,
Siguiente.
also fighting fires. Next.
Otra de las lecciones aprendidas es la
Another
automatización
lesson
como
learned would
clave
be
para la eficiencia.
automatization for
Esto es
key to
gracias
efficiency.
a las
This is
plataformas
thanks
como
to
Google
platforms
Earth
as
Engine,
Google
Global
Earth
Forest Watch,
Engine and
Make,
Global Forest
estas son
Watch.
algunas de
Make.
las plataformas que
Those are
nosotros
some of
utilizamos
the
y
different
esto pues nos ha
platforms we use.
permitido
And this has allowed us to
automatizar todos los procesos que
optimize
antes pues
all
eran de forma
processes
manual.
that before were
Y con esto
manual.
pues la reducción de tiempos.
And this we have
Siguiente.
time reduction. Next, please.
La capacitación del personal.
Staff
Esto
training.
pues asegura que el personal a
This
nivel
is making
regional
sure
o
that the
nacional
regional staff or
sea
national
capacitado
staff
en
is
nuevas tecnologías
trained
y que
in new
así puedan
technologies
utilizarlas
and
de
are
una
able to
forma
use them
adecuada para
in
la
the proper
divulgación
way in order to spread out the
combatir
information
los incendios de
and
manera
to
más
fight
efectiva.
fires more
Siguiente, por favor.
effectively. Next.
Y también monitoreo en áreas prioritarias.
Also,
Como les mencionaba,
the
nosotros
monitoring
tenemos
our
más de
priority
79.000
areas.
áreas
We have
prioritarias
more
a
than
nivel nacional, que son los
89,000
incentivos
priority areas
forestales, y le
nationwide, as
damos el
we said,
monitoreo
and
constante
we are having a
a estas
constant
áreas.
monitoring
Entonces,
to those
el
areas.
monitoreo
So
puede ser más focalizado y
monitoring
esto
more
también
be more
reduce
focalized,
el tiempo
and this
de
is
respuesta.
reducing response times also.
Siguiente, por favor.
Next.
Bueno, y para complementar también tenemos
To add
otros
something
sistemas.
also, we have other systems.
Uno de estos es el sistema de
This
alertas por
is
deforestación.
other systems
Nosotros nos
by
conectamos
deforestation.
todos
We
los
are
días
connected
mediante una
every
máquina
day
automatizada
through an
con Global
automated
Forest Watch,
app with
¿verdad? De
Global
ellos
Forest Watch.
recolectamos las alertas
We
integradas que ellos
recollect
tienen
integrated
y
alerts they have,
la utilidad es que le alertamos
and
de
we
forma automática a
alert
los encargados
automatically
regionales sobre los
in
focos de
regional
deforestación
in
que hay
charge
dentro de
about the
nuestros proyectos de
deforestation
incentivos.
focus that we have in the incentive
Siguiente, por
projects.
favor.
Next.
Y aquí en la imagen pueden ver ustedes cuál
Here
es el
we can
proceso
see
resumido,
what's
¿verdad?
the
Tenemos la
summary of the
conexión con datos de
process. We
Global
have
Forest Watch,
connections with Global Forest
buscamos
Watch.
alertas dentro de
Here
incentivos
we look
forestales,
for
cobertura
alerts with
forestal,
incentives,
áreas protegidas.
protected
Y como tercer
areas,
paso,
and a
notificamos a las autoridades para que
third
ellos puedan
phase, we
ir a
notify
verificar
authorities so they
estas
are
alertas
able
en campo.
to
Y como
actually
paso 4
verify
está la
those alerts.
priorización
And
de
as a
proyectos.
step
Esto
4, we have the
nos optimiza
project
los tiempos de
prioritization. This
ejecución
is
porque
optimizing
priorizamos
times
proyectos para
because we
reducir monitoreos. Por
prioritize
ejemplo,
projects
proyectos
for
que no tienen
monitorings,
ningún
for
tipo de
example, projects
afectación,
that have no
pues no es
affectation.
necesario
I mean, this
darles
is
un
not,
monitoreo constante porque
we
están
don't have
cumpliendo con
to
las
constantly
actividades que se
monitoring them
comprometieron a
because they are
realizar.
complying with the
Y como
activities.
último paso es
And as the
las
last step,
acciones
we have
administrativas que nosotros tomamos contra las
administrative
personas que sufren
actions against,
o los incentivos que sufren estos
or we have
alcances, ¿verdad?
incentives of,
Entonces
for people
finalizamos
that
el
are suffering
proyecto,
from fire.
cancelamos el
So we
proyecto y
prioritize
requerimos
the
el
projects,
recobro
we
del
cancel
incentivo
projects,
forestal,
and
que
we
esto
want
es
to
dinero,
reincorporate
¿verdad?
the incentive, which is
Para
money.
que pues se puedan, digamos, cubrir los inconvenientes
So
que
we are
pasaron,
able to
digamos, dentro del incentivo.
cover the trouble the
Siguiente, por
people
favor.
went through. Next.
Aquí podemos ver un video. También
Here
tenemos
we
una
have a
plataforma
video.
web
We
que
have a
pueden
web
acceder para
platform
verificar
you
las
are able
alertas.
to access to verify
Aquí podemos
alerts.
ver que podemos seleccionar
Here we can
un
see we're
rango de
able to
fechas para
select a different
buscar las
date
alertas dentro de un
ranges
área
to look for
específica, un
alerts in a
departamento y un
specific
municipio.
area or a
Y en
department
el
or
video pues
a
vamos a
municipality.
acercarnos al área
And here in the video,
para
we
ver cómo
will
se ve esta deforestación.
see how this deforestation
Vamos a
looks like.
utilizar también un conjunto de imágenes
We will
mensuales
use the group
que
of
se van a
monthly
ejemplar
images that
para ver cómo ha
we
sido
have.
el cambio de
This
esa
is,
cobertura a través de imágenes
we're
mensuales.
able to see how these
Y este sistema,
changes
pues como les mencionaba,
were
está
applied,
siendo
and the
alimentado por
system
información de
is
Global
being
Forest
limited,
Watch.
is being
Siguiente, por
repeated by information by Global Forest Watch. Next, please.
Bueno, por mi parte, eso
So
sería todo.
that would be all on my
Muchísimas gracias.
side.
Podemos
Thank you
encontrar más
very much. You're
información en la
able to
página
find more
de nuestro Parque de
information in the
Bosques,
National
como
Institution
en
of
nuestro
Forests
portal. Pueden
and in our
encontrar toda
portal.
la información que
You're
les
able
mostré en los
to
portales,
find all
catálogos
this
de control
information,
y
portals,
más información.
dashboards, and much more information. Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juan Manuel. It's very interesting to hear about the way that your organization works to use not just Global Forest Watch, but other data sets in your work. So really interesting to hear. With that, I will hand off to our final speaker, Yiqing. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabella, for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I am Yiqing from PM Haze, a Singapore-based non-government organization working on developing community-led peatland management programs in Indonesia. And today I'll share a little about how we are working with a long-time partner of ours, Sungai Tohor Village, to develop community-based disaster resilience to peatland fires. Next slide, please. So since 2018, we've partnered with Sungai Tohor, a village in Riau, and it is also located on a peat island. So as you might already know, peatland fires are notoriously difficult to detect and control because they spread both above and below the ground. And this quality makes the fires very difficult to extinguish as well. And this is even more so when there's limited equipment and expertise. So to better illustrate the discrepancy between the community capacity to deal with fires and the scale of the fires which I'm referring to, I want to play a short clip on which the community leader talks about the challenges in firefighting as well as haze during the last major fire incident that occurred on their island in 2014.
The government then issued a plantation license to PT Lam.
PT Lum itu dengan setiap sawahnya kami, dia bikin kanal besarnya 10 meter, lebarnya, dalamnya 6 meter, panjangnya saya pun tidak tahu entah seberapa. Sedangkan kanal yang kami bukanya semeter, kedalaman 1,5 meter. Itu sekedar hanya sebagai transportasi aja.
The villagers began to see their sago crops die as the peatland that sustained them dried out. And it wasn't long before forest fires started raging in Sungai Tohor.
Semenjak saya lahir sampailah tahun 2014 tidak pernah terbakar seperti yang tahun 2014 ini. Kami dulu tidak tentu siang malam, memang tidur di hutan itu untuk memadamkan api. Berganti-gantian masyarakat itu. Kami sini gitu. Alat seadanya aja. Waktu itu mesinnya mesin apa? Mesin robin. Mesin robin yang pakai tarik itu pakai selang. Nah, itu pun air tidak ada. Memang tidak dapat dipadamkan lagi. Api cukup besar. Itu waktu di NSP itu kan datang helikopter untuk memadamkan, tidak bisa.
The 2014 fires were a wake-up call for the community of Sungai Tohor. They realized that if they did not take back control of their environment from the companies, their very way of life would be at stake.
All right. Thank you so much. So for the next slide. Yeah, so as you could gather from the video, Park Wong Nong was mentioning that firefighting is really a community effort where people in the community, regardless of their jobs and age, are placed on the front lines. Yet they were dealing with a limited number of weak water pumps. They also didn't have the drones to verify multiple hotspots at the same time. And what that leads to is tedious on-foot verification missions where the team has to cut through thick forest undergrowth. This itself can take up to 8 hours, and this completely delays the fire response. So over the last 2 years, we have been providing some equipment and training to address these issues that the community raised directly to us. However, as we learned more about this, we realized we could do a lot more in this area. Next slide, please. And this realization came with, I think I'm at the wrong slide. Yeah, and this one. Okay, so the realization came with a few things that happened over the course of the past year. So first, during drone training, we discovered that there was no fire risk map of the island available. And the community itself wasn't aware that a map like this would be valuable to help them better understand where and why fires start. And next, we started then compiling historical and geographical data on hotspots and fire occurrences. And here we hit another roadblock. What we found was that the local written records were scarce and open source data was a little bit broad for community use. So we did try to rely on just verbal accounts, but we found that they were not particularly accurate or comprehensive. So the next thing we decided to do and to explore is really to try to combine local knowledge with open source data. In this table, I laid out a summary of our activities as well as our plan to address the identified gaps. And this is also where some of Global Forest Watch's data sets come in useful for us. So as Jimmy has covered, the historical fire alerts and the tree cover loss due to fire data sets, we found were particularly useful to help us understand and build a picture of the past trends in hotspot and fire incidences. We want to be able to piece this together with local memory of burnt areas, their boundaries, as well as smaller fires that might not have been captured in these data sets. Next, to assess the fire risk of different areas, we found that the deforestation alerts, land use, and tree cover data sets were relevant. And it is very important in this case to understand human activity because most peat fires in Indonesia are started by a human source. And it is through identifying these activities that targeted education of specific communities can be conducted in hope of creating more impactful engagement. And so this is currently where we are at in our journey. Can we share the takeaway slides? Thank you. So upon reflecting on our work in the community-led disaster resilience so far, I want to conclude by sharing three main takeaways that we had. So number one, we found that starting by addressing immediate community needs, such as equipment, before introducing the concept and work in data-driven approaches, made the transition a lot more organic. It also appeared to have encouraged more community buy-in and participation, as well as interest in the activities. So next, there's also a need for more accessible resources to bridge communities to important data that is available online, such as those on Global Forest Watch's platform, because basic data literacy is still crucial in implementing an approach such as this one. And number three, open source data offers a breadth of knowledge, but it has to be validated with local knowledge and ground truthing. Last slide. And yeah, that's all from me today. If you have any other questions or suggestions, because we are still in the phase of developing this program, please feel free to reach out to my email. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that presentation. It's really powerful to hear about the different ways you're using data and opportunities where data on Global Forest Watch could help address some of the gaps or better support your work, but really powerful to see the role of community in your work. I'll give some brief takeaways. Just want to thank our speakers for these amazing presentations. I know they only got to touch a little bit on like all the impactful work they're doing in this space, but overall, we're seeing that forest fires are increasing around the world and becoming more severe. And that's why we really want to take the time today to talk about the different ways that organizations can use this really powerful data on Global Forest Watch, other data sets to better prepare and respond to fires. And so, as we mentioned today, we shared more about our offering on Global Forest Watch, the different data sets to help you all when it's protecting from fires. Of course, we only gave a brief overview. So if you have any questions, I'll send the link to our help center. We have some information and you should stay tuned. In the following year, we'll have more guidance and articles and documentation on how to use the data sets on Global Forest Watch, including the fire data sets. So we'll we'll have more materials there. And also a quick note that you can sign up to receive notifications for fire alerts. So if there's an area of interest you're trying to monitor and want to be notified in the future about fires in that area, you can do so. We only touched on the surface, but we can provide more information, or our team is happy to get in touch to walk you through how to use the data in your work. But thank you again for all of our speakers. I invite all of the speakers to turn on their cameras as we're now going to segue into the Q&A. So I know a few questions already came in from the audience. We can go to the next slide briefly. So we'll have our guest speakers, yes, I see all your cameras are on now, great, respond to some of the questions that came through. I would say the first one, really interesting. I think this one would be great for better understanding the context of fires. So we have a question from Jan Oladan. So thanks for the overview of the GFW fires data. Is there a way to tell if fires are good or bad, for example, human-induced for land clearing, etc., from the GFW platform or fires data in general? Or would this require more careful consideration or case study focused work? Great question. Jimmy, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a really good question. This is something that's still very challenging to do, to be able to distinguish between fires that are caused by humans and ones that are caused by natural causes like lightning. I know that there are some organizations that are working on ways to predict when fires have been caused by lightning, but I think the data is very localized. I know of one organization in Florida in the United States, for example, and I think they're kind of just focused on their region. So I'm not aware of any global data sets that can kind of help with that. So it really does require some more careful analysis and case studies. I think one thing that does potentially stand out is that fires in tropical rainforests are historically very rare. And so when you do see fires in like the Amazon rainforest or in the Congo Basin, for example, a lot of cases, those are human caused fires related to deforestation and land clearing activity. Another thing that might help identify maybe extreme fires, not necessarily human versus natural, is the fire alerts have an attribute that measures fire intensity. And so in some ecosystems, low intensity fires are relatively common. And so if you start seeing fires that have a really high intensity, that could be an indication that that climate change is influencing the fire activity in that region and creating more extreme wildfires. There's a paper that came out recently that kind of found this connection. But yeah, very good question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jimmy. And I see we'll take a few questions since we have about 8 minutes left, but I think these ones were following one Manuel's presentation. So talking a bit more about your use case, how can the data benefit the firefighters fight the fires more efficiently when they are in the middle of combat? Would you like to respond to this, Juan Manuel, and share a bit more information?
Sí, sí, sí. Bueno, en medio de un combate,
In the middle of
esos datos de puntos de
activity,
carga
I
no
think
son tan
these hit
eficientes
points are not that
porque
efficient because
no son datos
those
en
are
tiempo real, no son
not
datos inmediatos.
real-time data. Those are
Según
not
la
immediate
descripción
data.
de
According
NASA,
to the
son datos casi en tiempo real porque
NASA
llevan un proceso en el
description,
que
they are
los
almost
toma el
real-time
satélite y el
data because there
algoritmo
is a process
procesa y
from the
detecta la
satellite and then
variación de
the processing
temperatura.
of the
Entonces,
algorithm and the
no es
processing of the
un
temperature.
dato que se genera en
Therefore, this
cuestión de
is not
segundos.
a
Entonces, se lleva un
second
proceso al menos de
generated
unas 2
data.
horas para
It
confirmar
takes at least 2 hours
un
to
punto de carga.
confirm a hit point.
Very much. Very helpful. And we also have, I think, is a really interesting question. Talking about, so we use a lot of this information from NASA, and I think maybe Jimmy, you could speak to this one. The question's in Spanish. I'll say it, I'll translate to English though. So, how reliable is free information like NASA's platform? This question is from Stephanie. I think it might be nice to share a bit more about, from a transparency perspective, a bit more about the data and the reliability. And if you'd like to speak to that a little bit, Jimmy.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the data itself is fairly reliable. It depends, I guess, on what confidence level of the data that you're using, which is one of the reasons why we allow users to filter the data to just high confidence alerts, which have a higher accuracy of detecting real fires on the ground versus the lower confidence ones, which in some cases, low confidence alerts can get triggered by things like the sun reflecting off of metal roofs. And so that's why they offer these different confidence levels so that you can be a little bit more certain about where fire activity is happening. Um, with that being said, when you filter to just high confidence alerts, you may miss some of the smaller fires that are going on the ground. So it's certainly not a perfect product, but still very useful for monitoring remote areas where it might not be possible to have someone stationed at like a watchtower or something like that, monitoring a large remote area like that.
Very helpful. I think that's good context. I know we get that question a lot. So I'm glad we were speaking to that, and all our data is reviewed. And if you have any questions, of course, I will put the email from GFW. Feel free to reach out to researchers like Jimmy. I'm happy to answer any questions. This question I think would be great for you, Eugene. Typically, this was in Bahasa Indonesian. I'm translating to English, but they want to ask you a bit more of, so what is being done to the peatlands that have burned? If you can talk a bit more about the impacts or what happens. Let me know if you'd like to address this question and share more information.
Thank you for the question. So with the community, actually, the first thing, our original program with them is with regards to peatland restoration. So this fire mitigation program actually came out of it. So in 2014, after the serious haze event that they had a lot of severely degraded peatland as well as burnt peatland. And so we work with them to do re-wetting and revegetation activities that they actually already started by themselves, but we managed to kind of support them to expand the activities. And so how we see this fire mitigation program come in is really to complement this in terms of because our goal at the end of the day is to reduce fire risk of the peatlands. And being able to assess the fire risk, we can then also start prioritizing areas where peatland restoration is most needed, where re-wetting activities is most needed. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Yiching. I know we only have a few more minutes. I'd love to hand over to Juan Pablo. We have a question talking about wanting to learn more about the way forest management can reduce impacts. For example, this question from Theo is talking about how in Portugal and Spain, eucalyptus plantation forests are increasingly criticized for their high flammability and fuel load, for instance. So I'm wondering if there's any examples from Bolivia where the forest sector can best adapt its practices to reduce fire hazard from related impacts. Curious if you have any thoughts you'd like to share, Pablo.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Importante
It's important
considerar la
to
generación de
consider
capacidades
the
tiene que hacer con
capability
actores locales.
creations with
En este
local
caso,
actors.
nosotros generamos
For example,
capacidades
here
para
we create different capabilities
monitores territoriales.
for
Lo
having
mismo
land
que en
monitors,
determinado momento ellos
and
mismos son
in
los que
some
hacen
ways they are the same, that
verificación,
are
tanto la
verifying.
detección con los
Well,
mapas,
they are
la
doing
alerta
detection
temprana,
with
pero
maps
también en la
with
verificación de
early
cambios. Yo creo
early alerts, but also they are detecting inland. So they are doing this, and this is very important because without this, it's very difficult to know this is an actual fire. So it's really important to train people, to train the people on site. So we are having different actions for having prevention actions and also early alerts. We are working both sides very strongly now.
Thank you very much, Juan Pablo. And with that, we are at time. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining our webinar. I know we didn't have a chance to get to everyone's questions, but I'd recommend emailing us at gfw@wri.org if we didn't have a chance to get to your question. As a reminder, we will share the slides and the recordings following this webinar. We also have a survey at the end. I please invite you to complete the survey to let us know how the webinar was. But I also open for our speakers. If there's any final words or comments from any of our speakers that you'd like to share before we close, feel free. But if not, we can end promptly at 9. So thank you again. And please stay in touch for the follow-up email in the next 3 to 5 business days. And thank you again for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Gracias, hasta luego.